Welcome. I'm Reverend Sue Browning, and I am the minister who is privileged to serve the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River and the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Easton. It is wonderful to be together. My partner leading the service today is Annie Lavin, and I'm grateful for all of our collaboration that led to the service this morning. So we come together to welcome a new church year. This is our return from summer. For many, this will be familiar. The chalice lighting will be familiar. Our singing of a hymn will be familiar, and reflection, message, and even the tradition of water communion is familiar. The other thing that's become familiar, it's taken a little bit of time, but we're now also familiar that we click into these services. We click into a YouTube service, and that is how we access the service. So whether you're watching it on your phone or your computer or on your TV screen, it's something we've done now for 6 months. Sort of like wearing masks, washing our hands till they're raw. This is something we've gotten used to. And you're also going to notice today we are offering the service from the Chestertown Congregation's Sanctuary, and we are doing so in partnership with the two congregations. It's been a wonderful opportunity to work together in worship with both sets of team members, to share our music, our tech, our sound skills. And for most of our services, not all of our services this fall, this is how we will be worshiping together. While the service is familiar to many, I'm also hoping we have some visitors here. That there are some folks that are starting September and wondering about Unitarian Universalism, wondering about our congregations, and we are very excited to get to know folks even in this unusual of times. So please check us out on our website, give us a call, email us. We would love to get to know you better, and we would like to know your questions. So I invite you now, wherever you are, to take a deep breath. I invite you to find the center you need for this morning. To find that place of center you need for today, for this week, for these unusual times. We are a faith tradition that lives out our values of inclusion. That has not changed. We are a faith tradition that welcomes everyone's questions. That has not changed. We are a tradition that invites you to bring your full identity, to leave nothing behind when we come together. That is our deepest value, and it has not changed. So while our form of gathering is a bit different, our needs for connection remain the same, our call to be together remains the same. So as we take time from the busyness of the day-to-day, as we come together for this service, welcome to worship.
Please join me as I light the chalice for this incoming service. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within all creation. We light this chalice for truth. May the search for truth be with us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts. Good morning, everyone. My name is Annie Lavin, and I am your service leader this morning. September's incoming service, including water communion, is a special one for many of us, one that we look forward to. It was first initiated in the 1980s at a Woman and Religion Convocation in East Lansing, Michigan. This morning, we join UU churches throughout the country and beyond in performing what has become a well-loved tradition. Water has so many connotations. Its ability to cleanse and purify, its fundamental necessity for life, its connection with renewal, and its ability to connect each of us to the other and all to creation. In that wonderful poem by Langston Hughes, A Negro Speaks of Rivers, he alludes to water's role as the cradle of human civilization, that along the rivers in Asia and the Near East and Africa, communities were built that grew into flourishing civilizations from which our culture is descended. But water is much more than the cradle of human civilization. It is the cradle of life itself on this planet. Water then insists that I use it to connect to all of life, and not to stop there, but to feel its undertow as it pulls me downward into still deeper levels of reflection, wisdom, and grace. Please join us in singing the hymn, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, number 361.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Good morning. I'm Liz Hausberg, the Coordinator of Religious Education for Children and Youth at UUFE. Today we're talking about how water mixes together, and I thought, what a great opportunity to do a little mixing. If there's one thing I like to do, it's mixing things up. So I have some clear water, and then here's the funny thing. So I bought some food coloring to make some blues, and this, believe it or not, is 1 drop. Is that amazing? But let me just show you what happens when I mix, 3 drops. Look at the difference in the blues. I found that really fascinating. So what if I take this lighter blue and I add a little water to it? I wonder what would happen. Not a whole lot, right? It just changes a little bit, maybe a slightly lighter color. And that's what happens when we mix with other people. Sometimes we change a lot. Sometimes we might just change a little. So I'm going to take a little red. And I want to put some drops in here. I bet when you're thinking right now, wow, I wonder what color she's going to make. Well, let's see. So I'm going to add 1. Let's just add 2. And I brought a spoon with me so I can mix it up a little. And let's see what you know what? It's not totally purple yet, but we're getting there. I'm going to add another drop of red. And we'll see what happens. What if we added a little more blue to the mix? Let's see what happens. So we add a little more blue to the mix. Now let's do a little stir here. I know it's hard for you to see on the video camera, but this is a beautiful color of purple, but it's really hard to see between my purple shirt and our video camera. So I find this just fascinating. So as we add things to the water, it changes. In the same way that when we add things to ourselves, we change. So I want to do one more. I still have some clear water left. So I thought, let's take that blue again. Let's add a drop of blue. And let's do a little stir here. Oh, look at that beautiful blue. And what would happen if we added a little, I don't know, let's add a little yellow. Let's add a drop of yellow and see what happens to our blue. So let's add a little drop and see. Oh, you know what's so hard for you to see on the camera? I just don't think you guys can see it. Maybe a little bit you can see the beautiful green that is starting to turn, but it is so hard to see on the camera. I wish you guys could see it. It is gorgeous. It's a beautiful, like Kelly green, and what a change. Now, if I added more blue to this, I would even, I added 3 drops this time. I had 3 drops to this, to our water. Wow, it's really turned into this, oh my gosh, almost blue again. Almost blue again, or a darker shade of the same blue. So when you think about people and when you think about our water, as more things affect us, we can change. Now, we all hope, of course, we change for the better. Okay, like my beautiful colors. I think they all got better each time something was added to them. So my blue changed with red to a beautiful purple. My blue with a little bit of yellow changed to a beautiful green. When we add other people into our lives and we interact and we mix with other people, we change too, and we have this more beautifulness to ourselves. So as you listen today, keep in mind that idea of change, and as things are added, changing for the better and making ourselves that much more beautiful as we work with others. All right, I'm going to take you back now to the service. Thank you.
I invite us now into a time of reflection, a time of meditation. We come together this morning for a deep pause. We come in return. We come in renewal. And we come looking for shared hope. But too, we also come in honesty. We're not quite sure if we're ready for return, if we're ready for renewal. We're not quite sure if we can trust shared hope. In our gathering today, I invite you to lay down all that is feeling heavy to you in this space. I invite you to lie down all of these experiences that we've gathered of living with the pandemic, all the ways we've learned, and take a moment to lift up the spots that have been joyful. Lay down for now your worries about our community, your worries about our country. Lay it down just for a bit. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we come together laying much down. We come in witness to one another's challenges. And we come knowing that it's through our connections to one another, the many ways that we are connected through strands we cannot see, that our load may be lightened. And as we witness the joys around us, new births, new marriages, new experiences, the courage of many, lean into that shared place of joy. It's in sharing all of what is our lives, what feels new, what feels heavy, and what holds us up, that we build and we return to community. As we look to one another, Let us hold on to the beauty of creation, to water, to cycles of water, to images of water. And in all of that beauty, in all of the joy, and in sharing of our burdens, may we trust that yes, there is hope, and there is especially a shared hope. Amen, and blessed be.
Okay. Acknowledgements of the heart is when we light candles for our joys and concerns. We build community week after week through our sharing of these joys and concerns, and we invite you to call Sue or email the office so they can be included in our services. I'm going to be lighting the candles for the ones this week. The first candle that I have lit is for the losses due to COVID, the deaths and the struggles, and certainly for the survivors. Another candle has been lit for our first responders, the medical teams, and the many who have provided services so that we can remain sustained and safe. Another candle is in honor of and memory of 9/11, for those who lost their lives, and for all of us whose lives will never be the same. And the last candle I have lit is for the joys and concerns that remain silent in our hearts. We will have a moment of silent meditation.
I'll be your candle on water. My love for you will always burn. I know you're lost and drifting, but the clouds are lifting. Don't give up, you have somewhere to turn. I'll be your candle on the water, till every wave is warm and bright. My soul is there beside you. Let this candle guide you. Soon you'll see a golden stream of light. A cold and friendless tide has found you. Don't let the stormy darkness pull you down. I'll paint a ray of hope around you, circling in the air, lighted by a prayer. I'll be your candle on the water. This flame inside of me will grow. Keep holding on, you'll make it. Here's my hand, so take it. Look for me, reaching out to show, as sure as rivers flow. I'll never let you go. I'll never let you go.
So almost 6 months ago to the day, we were warned about a virus. At the time, it wasn't the virus. We hadn't quite made it our nemesis, but there was this virus that was out there. And we went from normal to shutdown in a matter of days. And we've lived in this sort of out-of-body experience now for 6 months. We've been through it for the spring. We went through it for the summer. And now we are entering fall. And frankly, I think we're still a little wobbly. We're still figuring out what this all means. And I looked back at my notes. Back in March 22nd was our first virtual service. And we had just barely registered these 2 YouTube channels. And I found I used these words at that very first service. We're faced with being creative in how we stay connected. The goals for Sunday worship haven't changed, but will take on many forms and formats over these next weeks. I was warning you that I thought this virtual thing could last up to weeks. I remember talking with Christina. She is the president of the Easton congregation, and we were like, we need to gear everybody up. We might be out of the sanctuary for up to 8 weeks. So we now know that it played out a little differently. We now talk about the virus. We've made it our nemesis, and it is the water we are swimming in. It has become our reality. It is going to become one of the stories of our generation. So over the last month, I'm not sure why, but the phrase, "we can only begin where we are," keeps running through my head over and over. I would say it started a couple of months ago, and I just kept thinking, I wish it were this way, I wish it were that way, and I realized it's not. So I think it's actually good advice for a whole lot of parts of our lives to just think about where we are. So I want to start with just a few observations, my take on where I think we are right now as a community and as a society. First, these last months have come with isolation. For some, they've been at home a lot more than usual, maybe by themselves, maybe with one other person. I also know there are larger families. They're isolated in a different way, that they're in a crammed shared space and isolated in how they have to do the day-to-day of their lives. I think we've all stared at our walls. We've done errands alone. And in virtually every case I know, social activities have been curtailed. Whether it's school, church, family events, book clubs, everything social has been a bit less in isolation. The second observation I want to make is I think we now filter every choice we make through a lens that says, is this safe? Is this safe for me? Is this safe for others? Every one of us now has a mask, something that virtually none of us had ahead of time. And some of us actually have found out that we have stores of masks, masks that probably need to be washed. I have masks in my car, I have masks on my counter. I never know where a mask is when I actually need it. I forget masks. And I think it's also in this time of safety, we observe others' behaviors relative to safety differently. We sometimes can be a little snarky, a little critical. We wonder, are people endangering us? We have a whole sort of way we are during this pandemic. We wonder about state and local laws. We wonder what's going to work to both keep people connected and keep people safe, and we want it both. There's lots of things we can observe, but I want to observe the third thing. And the third thing is I think we've had a unique chance to witness local and state and federal governments. We understand the roles that they play differently. We've looked for clarity. We want both moral clarity and implementation that's really strong and clear in our policies, in the decisions that are being made, and we want everything enforced well and fairly. And it is a really unforeseen and unpredictable time. We've held folks that have these public roles. There's the elected officers, but there's also school superintendents and researchers and academics, all sorts of folks. We've held their feet to the fire to try to understand what will work, what will be for the good of everyone. At some point in my life, I used to think that one of the worst jobs in the world would be to be a school superintendent, to be up at 5 a.m. and have to make the decision on a snow day whether to cancel school or not. Everybody knows weather's unpredictable. That's not a surprise to anyone. And yet we ask this person to make their best guess about a snow day, and the person has to make that decision knowing that everybody will be upset. Either the decision will be made and there will be buses sliding all over the highways because school should have been called off, or it'll be perfectly sunny at 9 in the morning and everybody's wondering why the kids aren't in school. So I used to think being a superintendent and calling snow days was the hardest thing in the world. Turns out it's not. There are some major, major decisions that have had to be made. And I know I place a lot of gratitude, even in the imperfect ways that they've all come down, that there's a lot of pressure. So I think we've created some new patterns in our isolation, both in sort of a simplicity and a retreat. And we've also had to test our trust. The safety question is often a question about trust. Where are we going to trust? How are we going to understand others' behaviors? And like I said, we've learned a lot about government and roles. What I think crosses across these observations is that we have a deeper understanding of connection. We know better what we miss or what we don't miss, what we trust. And we have, I think, a heightened sense of our mutual destiny as a people. We have a different sense of our shared fate and how precarious it is when one day in March we can go from normal to shut down. I think in some ways we've learned to appreciate the slower pace, the less chaotic calendars. But I'll also take the risk to say that I think virtually everyone is missing a deeper sense of connection, the connections in our lives and the way we lived out those connections, from a simple lunch with a friend or celebration of a graduation or the day-to-day interactions in the workplace or a volunteer setting. Things changed and it's been hard. So I ask us, as we reflect today, as we come back together, to start from where we are. We return back to our congregations, our faith homes, with some limitations. When we hear "Enter, rejoice, and come in," with this invitation to come in, we know it won't be to a full sanctuary. And as we invite folks to come and reconnect, we are kidding ourselves if we think this feels the same. And yet, I sense we need connection more than we've ever done it before. We know it's possible to work together, worship together, to have coffee together. We have the ways of technology, and I'm also hearing folks that they miss something else about connection. So this morning, as Annie and I invite everyone to return, I am very aware that this cannot be a turn the key, play a hymn moment. A wholehearted return to community, especially to do it in ways that are still a little unfamiliar and awkward and wobbly, even ways that we resist, will involve some honesty around our new pandemic way of being with one another. Because connections take effort. Commitments require an energy. Belonging just doesn't come to us automatically. We need to come to the opportunity. If we're going to connect, if we're going to return and be honest about it, we need to think about what that means today. We need to think about the relationships. While it's not a perfect metaphor, if I think about last March, in some ways we were dumped together into the wilderness. And while it's not a literal woods, mountains, snakes kind of wilderness, we have experienced the solitude of wilderness. We have had the parts of wilderness that offer clarity. Because I think sometimes when distractions are pulled away, when you're in this time of solitude, we learn. We also know a little bit differently about loneliness that comes with wilderness, and tenacity, resilience. There's a lot that's there. But I think a wilderness is not a place to land. Wilderness is something that you journey through. A time in the wilderness can pass quickly or slowly, and in fact, one of the characteristics of wilderness is that time is a little bit different. And I've had a lot of folks share with me that in this time of the pandemic, they can wake up in the morning and they're going to bed at night and they can't figure out what happened. Where did the time go? Other times are longer. But I think as we look at this experience of having been through the wilderness, of at least maybe still being in the wilderness, we have to wonder how we're going to come out. We're probably going to come out while there's still restrictions, while we still have masks, but we make choices to reconnect as we come through the wilderness. In his relatively recent book, The Second Mountain, David Brooks considers the journeys we take in the wilderness, and he shares his view that when you get down to the core of yourself, you find a deep yearning to care and to connect. I sense he's right. And I think this yearning that he talks about, it takes on a different pattern for each of us personally. So I've wondered, here's our challenge. How do we as a congregation help everyone's yearning to care and connect? I think I look at this about the personal level. I look at it also as congregations. How are we going to help one another as we make our choices about moving through the wilderness? I think many of us, we know we'd like to go back to the familiar, but even if we can't go back to the familiar, we're ready to do some different types of connection. And I think sometimes what we've been doing, one of the places where we might ask the questions a little bit differently, instead of asking, how is it we're going to connect, which gets us to Zoom and all sorts of recording things, let's spend a little time thinking about why it is that we connect. Before we get to that point of how, why is it that we return back each year? Why is it that the words of welcome are included in every service we have year-round? Why do we as Unitarian Universalists value inclusion and value the continuing widening of circles? Because I think we personally come back to renew our souls. I think we come back to re-energize, and that's true. But I think the real reason we come into community is not for ourselves. We come into the community to create something for others, to be open. When you create an intentional community, there's a lot of ways you can think about that. We refer to beloved community different ways. But when we say we truly want to create a place that is open and caring, it's because we're moved by the needs of others. It's not something transactional, but we know that every week we each bring a slightly different self into this space. Different members need different parts of extra care. We come and we have our community open to welcome a stranger who is looking for a place to belong. A community that's ready to see them and all of who they are. A community ready to be changed by each person who comes into the circle. There was a book that was recently published by the Unitarian Universalist Association. It was part of something called the Commission for Institutional Change. And the title of the book is Widening the Circle of Concern. And it's for a group that looked at all the barriers, all the ways we hope we're open, but sometimes we're not that open, and asked a lot of questions. But one of the really important questions I think that is asked has to do with our theology. As Unitarian Universalists, we have some guiding principles. We have long traditions of how we come into covenant and why we gather together. And I want to read this quote from that book. It says, over the decades since the consolidation of the Unitarians and Universalists, there has been an overemphasis on individual exploration and experience as the primary, if not the sole center of religious experience that's developed. The centering of the individual decenters the communal as the focus of our theological expectation. So it's written in sort of theological terms, but it reminds us that we like connection. Connection is meaningful because it's not all about us. I think for a lot of us in the wilderness, we've had a lot of our own pain and we're going in these circles. But when we come out and we figure out ways to connect, we do so in community to care for one another. Because I think our challenge, while it's going to be true in the pandemic, it's going to be true in the years to follow, is to remember that communal aspect of our faith communities. To remember we don't just do this for ourselves. So I ask, why is it we show up for one another in whatever forms we need to show up in? And I think about it not as transactional. It's not, I'm going to do this, so somebody will do this for me. It's about something deeper. It's about living into shared connection and knowing that the circle is important. It's important as a cog in our whole wheel of faith. So if we consider the why first, if we really are convinced it matters to connect, then we'll get to the how. We're not going to stay in the wilderness forever, and we can't wait till there's necessarily a vaccine. So how are you going to choose connections in your life in the short-term future? There's the connections in the congregation, there's connections with family, there's a lot of decisions folks are going to need to meet. And yeah, some of it's going to be on Zoom, and it's going to be on YouTube or small groups somewhere. But I think it's important to say I'll figure out the how, because the why to me for certain connections is just so important. So there's the YouTube and the Zoom, but there's also other things you can do in our faith community. You can make a call into the office, into one of our leaders, and offer to help. Maybe you want to call others in the community. Maybe you want to come and help weed the garden. I know in both congregations there's plenty of places that would be received well. Maybe you're willing to help with governance. You're willing to help our treasurer. You're willing to help different folks continue to strengthen these communities. Maybe it's in the way you choose to give. Because our commitment to one another, if we're going to build these communities, it's an awkward time. We have to commit to be all in. We need to read the newsletters. We need to find out what is going on in folks' lives, what is going on in our community. So how are you called to help others with their journey? How might that help your path? I don't think these are separate events. And so now as we continue with our water communion, I invite you to consider where you are ready for fresh expectations, to imagine the ways that all of this water is somehow connected, to imagine the cycle of connection as a critical life force. We're here together. We have shared hope together. May we move forward into this next segment of our service, returning again, showing up for one another again and again. We know why we do it. The how is just going to be a little different. And may we, above all else, trust in one another's love. May it be so, and blessed be.
In this homecoming ritual of water communion, we use water, the universal symbol of life, to recognize the beginning of a new church year. Some of us may be returning to this church community from time apart. All of us are feeling the rhythm of the seasons as summer leads into fall and the cycles of life continue. We have sent in pictures of water scenes to share with each other, just as we often share our individual insights and experiences. We know that a single drop of water alone has no color. It remains clear and translucent, almost invisible. But in combination with many drips together can create a brightly varied rainbow, unseen realities made real and present for all to witness and enjoy. Like waters that run from many rivers to the same sea, we are a people from many walks of life, coming together to celebrate and live our deepest values: that diversity is beautiful, that our communities are transformative, that we are stronger together than alone, and that our relationships are life-giving. All rivers run to the sea. Wherever you may be this morning, in your homes, on your couch, in your favorite chair, I invite you to read along with me the words for the Water Communion service this morning. They will be scrolled on the screen. It starts with a drip, then a trickle, a burble, a rush of water bubbling toward its destination, and finally the wide, endless sea. All rivers run to the sea. Today we celebrate the gift of water through song, pictures, and memories they bring. Though our experiences may differ, these waters signify our common humanity. As we step forth into the days ahead, uncertain though they be, we gather strength and comfort from the beloved community. Where rivers of tears may be shed, where dry souls are watered, where our joy bubbles, where our life cup overflows, where deep in our spirit we have found in this place a home. All rivers run to the sea.
So we're very happy to be outside with all the cicadas this afternoon and enjoying doing this song that I did with the kids at Peace Camp last year. I kind of missed being with them this year, and they invented all kinds of fun verses. So we're going to do the more standard verses that you may know. Hope you'll join in. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, love like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul.
We come to the end of our service now. Gratitude for so many folks that helped us pull this together, that helped Annie and I, to particularly the tech team, to everybody who offered music and Thoughts for All Ages and our words. So today we extinguish our chalice in the spirit of renewed connection. We extinguish our chalice in gratitude and in new ways. May we all be renewed. May we all show love to one another. Go in peace. Go in love. Go knowing love surrounds you wherever you may go.